Hi everybody, it's me, Beth Maitland at Drama Queen Bee Quilts, and today I'm going to talk to you about creating a fabric collage for slow stitching. Everyone has been so sweet and generous, and as I get ready to go to Australia, I just couldn't stand it. I made another I made another little needle book. It's so cute. And so I have listed in my Etsy shop some of the kits from my classes that I teach on slow stitching, and people have been lovely and purchased several, but some of my friends online that have done so are confused or just need some general guidelines about how to create all of this interesting fabric collage before we all sew it down and make the texture and do the actual slow stitching. So today, I thought I would do a quick tutorial for my friend Sharon and also several other people who have inquired about how to start when you have just a blank canvas. What do you do? So there's a video on my YouTube channel that talks about the various kinds of bases that I prefer. I love stitching on linen as sort of a first choice, but anything even weave will do. And I happen to have just a scrap here of Osnaburg cloth, and it's even weave. You can see that it tears beautifully, and I put an old scrap of quilt batting. This is 80/20 Hobbs heirloom, just scraps from cutting off the edge when I was long arming a recent quilt. So I like to have that for structure on the background. But now what do we do with this blank canvas? So I gathered a bunch of scraps. Just little tiny pieces of all kinds of things, lace, and this is all quilter's cotton, just little offcuts, little tiny scraps. Let's see, I mean, just even the tiniest little pieces, little bitty bits of things to sort of put together on this blank canvas like a puzzle. So think of it as putting together a puzzle that suits you. Also be aware, there are no wrong answers. There is nothing that you can do that is wrong in preparing this process. Another little sample for just an example for you to see is this. This is going to be the cover of a needle book, and I've already lined it with some Tilda fabric. This was a red and cream and pink and green piece of print, just a floral element on a print in some quilting cotton, which I cut out, sewed down, and did thread painting with embroidery on top of a little scrap. Remember that, because we're going to revisit that. Just a little quilting the cotton. This is a little piece of strip from the selvage at the end that I tore off of a Tim Holtz Eclectic Elements line of fabric. Some dots you'll see in a minute, some just a little print, some scraps and things, and you can see that we sort of layer all of this. We start with our bare canvas, we add the scraps around it that please us, and then the next layer on top is lace and Suffolk puffs and things like this, and charms and buttons and anything else you can sort of think of. So that's how we're treating this, as a blank canvas. And there are, like I said, no wrong selections, because this is all just what you like. Here's just a pinned process that I'm about to begin, also the cover of the needle book. And I happen to be fortunate and find some vintage textiles, but a lot of them were spoiled. This is a piece of an old handkerchief. I don't know what this was, maybe a napkin, but they were spoiled and stained and ripped and old and torn. And on this piece of hemp, someone had cross-stitched someone's initials in purple. And I don't care for purple, but I have friends that do, so this is going to be for a gift. And so I cut out the little pieces of beautiful embroidery someone many years ago has already put all this effort into, and we never want those textiles to go to waste. So I pinned them out in a pleasing fashion, but something cool in some Tilda and some scraps might be really nice underneath. I wanted to see the hemp, and I may do some of my own embroidery on this piece, but this is the perfect opportunity for some of these little offcuts of Tilda fabric. This is her chambray and some beautiful little prints that I made for another project. Those torn into bits underneath this might be a great way to go. Also, sometimes in the evening, if I don't have anything else on the go, this is an old shirt, a linen shirt of mine that I didn't like anymore. It never fit me in a flattering way. So I tore it into little bits, tore off the cuffs and the placket and made little scraps of linen. And sometimes I'll just sit and do little embroideries at night. And anything like this would work, ripped or cut smaller as an insert to these layers of someone else's beautiful work. So that's what I'm talking about. You sort of just gather things that you love and you start with your empty canvas and start putting them down. So let's get to it. Here's some other Tilda scraps from a kit that I made for someone, and we'll just start arranging those literally as just elements and pieces. And let's see, that's cute. We'll set that aside and see where that can go. And you just find things that sort of, you can overlap them, offset them. This isn't Tilda, but it might work. Let's just put it down and see where we go. This is a piece of Tim Holtz I just tore, and you can just find things that have elements that you like and use that in your collage. So we're really just filling space. We're putting together the pieces of a puzzle, and the puzzle pieces are little fabric scraps. Let's see what else we have. That's pretty. Here's some dots. Let's see. We need some polka dots in here. Let's put this underneath. So I sometimes leave little elements free from the backing so that I can insert embroideries or layer with the next embellishments. Something to keep in mind while you're preparing all of this is that you're going to have an embellishment layer that goes over the top. And it doesn't matter. Oh, here's some ticking. We love a little ticking. So see what we're doing? We're just putting together the pieces. We're just filling in the blanks. And then pretend like this is finished and this is what we decided. Oh, I wanted to show you this. There's the word Paris. And it's just in a scrap I found. It is also, I think, from maybe some Tim Holtz fabric. So let's say we want to just use that. I like to tear, as you see, in order to get that rough, shabby chic sort of frayed edge. You can cut them if you're a little more meticulous, but believe me, if you don't turn these under over time, they're definitely going to fray. And we love that. We like the texture. We like everything about it. So maybe here, maybe up here, underneath that photograph print. So see, we're just layering and deciding on stuff. Now, the next thing I do is pin them all down. You saw in my sample that those are already pinned down. And then the next thing we do is I just use a running stitch and just standard construction thread, machine assembly thread for making garment construction or sewing a quilt together, just plain old, regular, everyday, useful thread. Your choice, whether it's cotton or polyester, it doesn't matter, it's just whatever you have on hand. And I go around with a running stitch all the way around every square. Some people just use an invisible stitch and just tack it down. Some people don't mind it just pinned. But I've said this before in other videos, I stab myself every day that I sew. And so I like to sew everything down and eliminate the pins as soon as possible. But let's just say this is our design. We've now either pinned it down or we've sewn running stitch around all the edges and we've got this all organized. Now we can come in before we do our cantha stitching and sew this all down. We can come in and start adding our layers. Those aren't going to be permanent at the moment, but I want to give you an idea of the other things that happen when we start adding pieces of lace over the top. I don't like that, but I crocheted these little hearts for a class and gave them to my students. Maybe each, we'll cut those off, but maybe a little heart there. Here's some, let's see, Suffolk puffs. That's too large, but maybe maybe down here we could do one and then another layered on top, and we're making little things, little sort of decorative groupings. Here's some pearl buttons. Maybe we'll do 3 right there in that blank space. You can work in charms and sew all of those down over the top once the stitching is done. Now, when you do lay out your layers of things, you can keep that in mind when you're cantha stitching. If you're going to have a huge piece of lace overlaid or big Suffolk puffs, maybe you want to cantha stitch around the shape of the Suffolk puff. And so you either want to pin those in place or tack them down. And so you can see it's just as easy as it can be. There are no wrong answers. It is absolutely just what you like. It's up to you. It's your project. Slow stitching should not be stressful or anxiety ridden. Oh my gosh, what do I do? It should be, oh, I love how this looks. And it should be a process, a practice of gaining peace by taking things out of your mind and putting them into your hands and sewing. Repetitive stitching. It can be embroidery, it can be cross stitch, it can be needlepoint, it can be any specialty work, and those all have their categories too. But slow stitching is about combining a whole bunch of different techniques to a relaxing, quiet, mind-centering practice. You may listen to music, you may light a candle and have a hot drink, you may watch television and do this in your lap, you may take this out to your garden in fine weather on a tray and just sit and listen to the birdsong. Music, your favorite piece on the radio or whatever. The practice of slow stitching is not about stressing, it's about doing something pleasing that makes you happy. So I hope that answered some questions briefly about how we go about creating our fabric collage. Gather little bits and pieces, the tiniest of scraps. That little piece can go right there. The tiniest little scraps can be useful and bring a little pop of color underneath those buttons that we sew on at the end. There's no wrong answers. It's all about what makes you happy, what pleases you, what is attractive to your eye, the colors you like. I want to show you one more thing that I'm still in the process of doing my embellishment layer, but I don't know if this will even fit on camera. Let me turn it over. But here's a little bit bigger piece. Let's see. Let me see. I'm gonna have to zoom you up and tip you up. Sorry. This is just this is an old napkin. This acid green is an old cotton napkin. This is a coaster that somebody did the outline cross stitching, and then I added a piece of vintage and did my own stitching around the outside. And other scraps of fabric, just little things that were laying around. Another piece of vintage cross stitch that then I just stitched around to make shape. This was part of a hand towel, and I loved the edging, so I included the edging over the top. And in this piece, I didn't use any batting on the back. I just used a piece of muslin as my background, and all of the texture and all of that was the layering of the fabrics. So again, just little pieces of what was laying around. You can see now, I hope, that it is all about your preference and nothing to do with worry and stress. So I hope that this clears up some questions and gives you some ideas. Please enjoy your stitching. Please jump in and give it a try. I hope when your kits arrive, you're happy with the beautiful elements I've included for you and all the little bits. You'll notice the little charms and some buttons and things like that are also included in your kits. All the best to you. Have some fun summer stitching. This is Beth Maitland from Drama Queen Bee Quilts.